Today we are delighted to welcome Princess Alia Al-Senussi PhD, a passionate member of the art world, devoted to philanthropy and patronage initiatives supporting artists and their art ecosystems around the world. We are recording this episode from the beautiful offices and spaces of the Gagosian in London. Alia, may I kindly ask you to please introduce yourself?
Thank you, Elena. So happy to be here with you in a very beautiful gallery space here in London, and something that, I think really embodies the global art world. And of course, this nexus of art, culture, business, and of course, philanthropy, because so many things that artists and galleries do is to really support institutions, which is a passion of mine and also part of who I am professionally and personally. My various roles in the art world are related to really about bringing people together. And I work, of course, with Art Basel as a senior advisor for international outreach, as well as with the Saudi Ministry of Culture as a senior advisor. And, in a variety of kind of chairs and philanthropic roles. Most recently, very excited to say, I am now the founding chairman of the K11 International Council. So the K11 Art Foundation in Hong Kong and kind of across China, it's kind of started by Adrian Cheng. So another incredible millennial who has done so much to shape really how we see community in the context of art and culture. And this was our last week was in Seoul, and then next year in Hong Kong we'll have a kind of big celebration for it. And of course, here in London, I'm extremely involved with Tate as a member of the Tate Modern Advisory Council. As well, I'm a founding member of the Middle East and North African Acquisitions Committee. And particularly important this week with the kind of tragic events, of course, happening in Morocco and Libya, where, of course, my heritage as somebody who's half Libyan and, has spent countless, kind of memories in Libya and in Morocco. We see more and more, I think, why these initiatives, such as Tate, such as K11, about bringing communities together. And then, of course, my work with Art Basel and in Saudi is about the ways in which art and culture are brought to local audiences.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And congratulations on another amazing initiative. Can we kind of go back, and can I ask you to share with us 3 events that have shaped your life in a way that you wouldn't be where you're today if those events wouldn't have occurred?
Well, I think this probably is for everyone, but my mother meeting my father, particularly this way, the reason I say that is because my mother coming from a small town in Minnesota, moving to Cairo, meeting my father, who's, a Libyan prince, and, kind of starting this life together, which was very short-lived for them. And then when I was born and they divorced, I then lived with my grandparents in Cairo, then with my grandparents in Minnesota, and then moved from Cairo to California, then from California to Switzerland for boarding school. So the kind of trajectory of my life, in a way shaped by my parents, but then also, of course, shaped even at a young age by myself. I was always very independent. I was on a plane by myself from the age of 5. I went to boarding school at 15, which is, kind of an average age, let's say, for that. But this idea of being a third culture kid, which is one of my favorite phrases and one of the best articles I've ever read in the New York Times, I highly suggest, especially for your readers, I think very relevant to read, written by Noor Brara. And, it really encompasses who I am. And those episodes brought me closer to who I am and who I want to be, and also what I want to see in the world. And this idea of making connections between cultures, between disparate organizations and people, and, where you wouldn't have expected it, but you just have a sense and that they will fit and there is a synergy. And then the kind of course of my life of, always being really open to new opportunities because I was, moving around and traveling. But my various internships and really, going once was a PR company, once was at a Ministry of Health in France, and then finally at Goldman Sachs. And I would say that's probably the most important one, in the sense that, it just was kind of a logical thing that, a high achieving student from an Ivy League university goes into finance. So I, was at Brown and, got an internship at Goldman Sachs and have actually never felt so stupid in my life. And I think it was just not the way that my mind worked. And I think coming to that realization, that we can't do everything that everyone else does. Also, not everything is the right fit for us or that makes us happy. And just by that accident, I was, I think being open and talking to people about your struggles, then also in that moment, because I was like, this is just really not for me. A friend of mine's mother was like, there's an art project that you should go do. I was like, I'm not in the art world. I have no, I've been to a museum. My parents, whenever we go on a trip, you go to the museum in town. I actually had been to the Tate Modern for the very first opening because we had come to visit London, and I'd seen the incredible Olafur Eliasson show in the Turbine Hall, which was life-changing in the sense that you saw how a museum was a part of just people's everyday lives instead of, these like bastions, Ivy Tower kind of idea. So I had that in my head, but it wasn't something that I saw as a career. And so this friend's mother, there's this project in the middle of the desert in Siwa, and it's on the border of Libya, and you're Libyan, and so it just kind of all came together, and I was very open to it. And I said, okay, let me try this. And in the kind of cheesiest way possible, getting in a car, driving 10 hours from Cairo airport. I hadn't been back to Cairo, since I don't know, even a child. And, then arriving to this oasis, and actually the people who live there are followers of the Senussi, of the sect of Islam, which my family founded. And, there was just this energy in the place and in my own being there. And I, felt the way in which like Eli and Amelia Kavikoff were the artists that were there and executing this project and working with the local school children, and the way it changed the Westerners' perception of coming there and the way it changed the locals' perception of even, their own synergies within society, because it's a very segregated society in terms of men and women. And I just felt, art has the power to change the world. And, that was that moment for me. And then I would say, this was actually something I heard in a commencement speech recently at Egnal, in terms of like how adversity, also changes you and changes your trajectory, and that you should embrace it. And kind of certain moments in my life, one of which was actually my first job then, which I transitioned from being the project manager of CUA to working at a gallery, which then went through very serious financial difficulties. Just seeing that and then having to pivot and think, okay, I also knew I didn't want to stay within the commercial gallery world. So what do I do next? But I'm in the art world, in kind of finding a role for myself and finding out how I can work and be who I want to be, but not really within the context of one commercial entity or one institution, and finding a way in which I could, in a way, cobble together a career and a life that would make me happy in the aftermath of that moment. And then within the context of adversity, also doing my PhD, which I found, kind of totally almost broke me. And especially because it was kind of within the period of 2016, Brexit and Trump. And it was this kind of moment of like, what is this world? And here I am doing a PhD in politics, which I found also really academically very difficult. And how do I get this done? And kind of creating a community of people to do it with me. I was able to find a tutor. I was able to find somebody help me with, kind of formatting and kind of along the way, and my assistant, and just finding out how to kind of create a research bubble, where I could write what I knew to be true, because my PhD was based very much on my knowledge of my work in the art world, because I started it in 10 years, into my career, which is somewhat unusual. I'd say about half of my cohort were working on PhDs of things that they were completely disconnected from, with more just because they were intellectually interested in the subjects rather than coming from a kind of career place of experience. So for me, writing about politics, soft power, cultural diplomacy, and in the context of Saudi Arabia, translating my knowledge into writing into a PhD was in a way easy, but then in a way incredibly difficult because I had to have theoretical grounding. So creating these communities around it was how do I get something done in the context of like a moment of, quite, I'd say, deep sadness, in the world. But then thinking about this really positive moment in society, especially this was like right before Saudi really started to kind of change and transform. But at the same time, seeing that artists were such an important part of moving things forward. So that I would say were like, those are the three really key themes of my life. Maybe not events, but definitely key themes.
Thank you. And I believe you touched upon that, but you've had such an impact in the fields you are. And you mentioned, that drive to start in the financial world, which is very true, I think, also for younger generation still. If it's not the financial world anymore, it's the tech world. How did you discover that the work you do today is truly your passion and you're going to go for it as a vocation? It's not just a hobby. It's not just an interest. It's like what you do in your life and for life.
That was definitely being in Siwa. I mean, it was like from the first moment of, getting out of that car in the middle of the night and, being in this oasis. And then the next day waking up and being with these two incredible artists, Ilya Kavakov, who has recently passed away, and his wonderful wife and partner, Amelia, and then seeing the interaction with this local community. I just felt it immediately. I knew from that day that this is what I wanted to do. And then just jumped right in. I was 22 years old and, of course, full of energy. I think I still am. And knew that I wanted to work with artists, that I wanted to help artists realize these projects. And so ended up working with, I'd say, about 18 artists as the artist manager, artist director at the gallery. And traveling the world. I mean, I'd be on a plane to Brazil one day with Mariko Mori, come back, and then on a plane to Rome the next day, in and out of my house with like a suitcase and actually probably many suitcases, as some of our listeners will know. I do not travel light. And, just was able to have all these experiences really given to me and offered to me, but to take them, and was always very excited, to be in this world. And then so many people I met as a very young woman were very generous with me and have continued to be dear friends and collaborators, to this day. And, I was very lucky also to be at the right place at the right time. It was, I think, later that year, it was the same year that they announced Saadiyat Island in Abu Dhabi in this kind of drive within the UAE, and then in Qatar opening the Museum of Islamic Art, then announcing the Modern Art, Museum of Modern Art there, or Mataf, the Museum of Arab Modern Art. And it was when the Middle East was really waking up in the cultural sphere and in the context of the art world. And I, at the time, was, I would say, really the only Arab woman working in the contemporary art world. There was one other woman, but she was very focused on contemporary art rather than art from the Middle East. She was at an auction house and a very good friend to this day. And that was it. I was me, and that was it. And so it was just a moment. And so then it just grew from there. I think a lot of people will say there's, luck and timing and hard work, and all these things, go together.
So for the people who know you well, you really do have an impact in the fields you're working in, not just the art world, but also, for example, the educational world. For a younger, motivated audience, how would you advise them to proceed through their studies or their internships, or how they address these areas to truly also have an impact?
I think get involved. I would say that is the number one piece of advice that I would give anyone. It's get involved, join things, attend things, and really try to do as much as you possibly can. I don't believe in a 9-to-5 job. I know that, of course, many people in the world, must do that, and they have, of course, various, let's say, obligations that require them to stick to that model. But for me, and the way I live my life and the way I see many of my friends live very fulfilling lives, it's all consuming. It's something that you take home. It's something you share with your family. I have friends who bring their kids to, countless museum openings and art fairs, and it's so rewarding. So I'd say for a young person starting out, and even in high school and in college, one thing I do regret at Brown, for example, was that I probably didn't get as much as I could from my professors. I did join things. So I was president of the Arab Club. I was vice president or president, I can't even remember, of the international organization, BRIO. So I did, of course, join clubs and do things. But, I think I could have probably interacted more and done more with some of my professors. Being in the field that I'm in, I like to show up to things, and it actually really means something to people. And not because I'm famous or even now at this kind of point in my career where I'm, known, but people just appreciate bodies and good energy in a space. And it was something I really learned during COVID with Zooms. I really made an effort to join as many Zooms as possible because I had a very lucky COVID, but I think people felt, of course, extremely lonely. And just even joining those Zooms, like I had so many people, even like the Tate, I remember telling me, and it was really when it drove it home, is that I joined almost every single Zoom that the Tate did because they invited each acquisitions committee to join the other committees, Zooms. So, if you were on the Middle East committee, you were invited to join the Asia Pacific committee, the African committee, the South Asia. And I would just log on. I would often not put on my camera, or maybe I put it on for a couple of minutes and wave and say hi. But just the presence of people there. They also wanted numbers because they wanted to be able to say, we have had this, reach. But they were it really meant something to us to just have you there. And I listened. I always listened. And then I did a series of Zooms, and we called them for the online viewing rooms and these outreach programs for Art Basel. And it also really meant a difference for me when people would join. And I really enjoyed them. And I remember I had my goddaughter sitting on my lap, and we were in Aspen and really doing a Zoom, and, and it was just, it created community. So that's the online world. And of course that was COVID. But I think even before and after, the idea of people joining and being a part of a community is the single best way for you to figure out your passion. And then once you figure out your passion, to then fully engage with it.
And this links to the final question I have for you. You sit on multiple boards, you advise many very serious organizations. You're also a woman, although I don't want to make it just about that, but it's very rare for a woman to sit on so many boards and do so much advisory work at your age also. For individuals who want to also get involved or maybe shy, and especially women maybe too, what's your advice to build such an impressive portfolio of board positions and advisory board positions?
Well, I would say that in the art world, you have many more women involved than you would say in the business world. And I would say it is actually something I struggle with because I would like to be more involved maybe on the other side of art. And it is a struggle as a woman. It's a struggle as a younger woman. And it's a struggle when you kind of present yourself or look or dress certain ways, which I think is completely unfair. I think, we can, kind of be and present ourselves and be who we want as a professional. And so I would say it's actually even that is a struggle for me because the art world is more open to women. And especially the philanthropic art world is much more open to women. The business of the art world, less so. But I have been extremely lucky in that I have worked with women and men the two men who have been the kind of longest serving bosses that I've had in my life. I have never been made to feel in any way sexualized or demeaned, and have been so respected. And I have been so lucky that I have not experienced a Me Too situation, although I see it in organizations and I see the way that it's an almost tacit presentation or understanding. So I would say I'm extremely lucky because it's very rare that you have my experience, which has been overwhelmingly positive. But for people who don't have that, I think it's seeking the people who you want to be your mentor and actively approaching them and actively also pursuing those board positions, I was, on the Tate Young Patrons Committee, and I knew that the committee chair, her term was coming to an end. She and I were friends. she asked me, I didn't ask her, but then the second she asked me, I said, absolutely yes. You know, it wasn't something that I shied away from. I do think that some women, and especially younger women, oh, wait, let me think about it. Oh, I'm not sure. You know, no, take those opportunities. If someone's asked you, they think you're good enough. So if they think you're good enough, you should think you're good enough and go for it.
Alia, what are you looking forward to doing next? What's exciting that's coming up?
Well, of course, as we just had this announcement at K11. So, that's kind of now rolling and let's say snowballing in the best way. And Art Basel, we have, Paris coming up, which is, for me, an extraordinary week. But actually within the context of Paris, what is really exciting is that we're doing 2 major events for the Diriyah Biennale Foundation. So as I said, I'm a senior advisor to the Ministry of Culture. And within that, work closely with the Biennale. And, we're announcing the second edition. And the first edition was something that was incredibly important to me and to working on. And I think so demonstrated to the world and to the local audience, contemporary art in the context of the changing Saudi Arabia. And I feel strongly that this Vision 2030 plan and this moment in Saudi is nothing short of a complete social transformation and revolution. And it is such an important moment for the world also to see, but also for Saudis to embrace. And there are these incredible young artists there, also incredible mid-career artists there. And they're put in the context of the international art world in an international, extremely high level, very sophisticated conversation. So, it's kind of combining 2 of my favorite worlds, Art Basel and Paris, and this moment of kind of also Renaissance in Paris in the art world, and Saudi and the Biennale.
How exciting.
Very.
Fantastic. Alia, thank you for this candid conversation, authentic and candid, and we really appreciate it. We're also very grateful to be today here at the Gagosian in London, and thank you.
Thank you very much, and good luck to all of your audience in pursuing their dreams.
Thank you.